The most expensive sentence in hip-hop history was never recorded in a studio. The sentence was spoken into a phone camera by a man in a bathrobe, and within 72 hours, that sentence had a city council fielding questions, a mayor publicly contradicting a mogul, and a $124 million development deal sweating under a microscope the size of the internet. 6 words. Give them people back their money, Curtis. Rick Ross said those 6 words on August 8, 2026, and nothing in Shreveport, Louisiana, has sounded the same since. But forget the feud for a moment. Forget the albums. Forget the trolling. Forget 20 years of Officer Ricky jokes. Because the real story is not about Rick Ross, and the real story is not even about 50 Cent. The real story is about the third name in this war, the name nobody on hip-hop Twitter ever types, the name that never gets a trending hashtag. Shreveport. A city of 173,000 people got drafted as the unwilling third rapper in the longest feud in hip-hop, and what happened to that city is stranger, sadder, and far more important than anything either man ever put on a record. Keep watching, because by the end of this video, the beef is going to look tiny, and the city is going to look enormous. Start with the ground itself. Shreveport is not New Orleans. Shreveport is not Baton Rouge. Shreveport sits in the northwest corner of Louisiana, and Shreveport has been quietly bleeding for more than a decade. Between 2010 and 2022, the city lost roughly 21,000 residents and around 10,000 jobs. The metro area shrank from about 200,000 people down to roughly 170,000. Local reporters have stopped reaching for poetic language. Local reporters describe Shreveport bluntly: a city in a fight for survival. Downtown blocks sit half-empty. Storefronts that once held banks and department stores now hold plywood. Along Texas Street, the wind moves through buildings that have not heard a cash register in years. Now picture what it means when Curtis Jackson walks into a city like that. In 2023, 50 Cent publicly announced interest in Millennium Studios, a 985,000 square foot production facility that shut down in 2016 and sat mostly dormant, a sleeping giant on the edge of a shrinking city. In April 2024, 50 Cent formally debuted G-Unit Studios on that lot, and the city of Shreveport handed 50 Cent a ceremonial key. Read that again. A city that lost 21,000 people handed the key to the gates to a rapper from Queens. That is how hungry Shreveport was for a savior. That is how much hope was riding on one name. And 50 Cent kept moving. June 2024, 2 buildings on Texas Street, purchased, downtown, in the heart of the wound. Then January 12, 2026, the biggest domino of all fell. G-Unit Film and Television Louisiana finalized a landmark agreement with the state of Louisiana, a redevelopment plan valued at more than $124 million, targeting 3 properties in downtown Shreveport. Under that agreement, the state agreed to reimburse up to $50 million in support of the project. Louisiana Economic Development estimated the redevelopment would generate approximately 1,344 new direct and indirect jobs across northwest Louisiana. On paper, the deal was the biggest single injection of private entertainment capital the region had seen in a generation. Then the deal got bigger. The Shreveport City Council voted unanimously to extend the original 30-year lease on Millennium Studios to a 99-year lease. 99 years. A lease that will outlive every single person who voted for the lease. The council approved a non-profit vehicle designed to distribute up to $50 million in state incentives. The council introduced legislation to hand 50 Cent control of the Epic Building, the Empowering People and Career Center, a workforce training facility attached to the studio complex. And on June 17, 2026, 50 Cent stood behind a G-Unit branded fence at the corner of Spring, Fannin, and Commerce at a ceremony called Move the Dirt, breaking ground on the G-Dome, a brand new entertainment venue in the heart of downtown. Cameras rolled. Politicians smiled. And 50 Cent looked at the crowd and made a promise. You won't recognize it. June 17th deserves a slower replay. Groundbreakings are theater. Everyone in politics knows groundbreakings are theater, but theater has a function. Theater converts a paper promise into a public memory. The dirt moved that day, cameras captured the dirt moving, and from that moment forward every delay had a date to be measured against. For words from 50 Cent on that stage, you won't recognize it. The city believed those 4 words. Remember that the city believed those 4 words. Because here is what the reaction videos missed. Here is what the blogs skipped. The tension in Shreveport did not begin with Rick Ross. The tension began months earlier, and the tension began with 50 Cent personally. March 25, 2026. Curtis Jackson flies into Shreveport and, in a highly publicized ceremony, presents a $500,000 donation split across 9 local nonprofits, most dedicated to helping victims of domestic violence and sexual assault. A genuine gesture. Local news celebrates. Survivors' organizations say thank you, publicly on camera. And then, days later, a Shreveport city councilman questions the framing of the donation, suggesting some of the money was tied to a Netflix documentary 50 Cent was producing, questioning whether the gift was truly a straight charitable gift. 50 Cent erupts. April 2nd, 2026, Instagram. Man, I gave them $500K. They said for. Man, come on. 50 Cent accuses the city council of interfering with the donation and disrespecting the recipients. The Shreveport Times covers the clash. KSLA covers the clash. Hip-hop blogs take the story national. For the first time, the honeymoon between 50 Cent and the city of Shreveport cracks in public for everyone to see. Then July 13, 2026, the post that changed the political weather in Louisiana. 50 Cent uploads a cryptic caption suggesting a possible pullback from the Red River District, the crown jewel of the entire downtown vision. The message, in essence, the Red River District is Shreveport's money. If obstacles continue, the Red River gets pulled back. Peace. Panic hits City Hall. July 22nd, Mayor Tom Arsenault tells reporters that attorneys for the city and attorneys for 50 Cent are in active communication, reassuring residents the deal is not collapsing. Within hours, 50 Cent posts again, flatly denying the mayor's account. No contact, 50 Cent says. No contact between the lawyers at all. The Shreveport Times runs the headline on July 24th. 50 Cent says zero contact ever came from Shreveport attorneys. 2 versions of reality now sit on the public record, the mayor's version and 50 Cent's version, and neither side blinks. Meanwhile, KSLA reports the Red River District plans have effectively been placed on hold, pending major structural repairs to the properties. And in the background, a statewide report lands, like a cinder block. Louisiana now leads the entire country in film industry job losses, a 32.2% decline since 2024, roughly 1,190 jobs gone, even as the state film tax credit survives near elimination with a lowered cap of $125 million. That was the room. Already on fire. Every alarm ringing. And that is the exact moment Rick Ross walked in carrying gasoline. Rewind 2 weeks from August 8th, late July 2026. Rick Ross has just dropped a 12th studio album, Set in Stone. The rollout is loud. The features are stacked. Then the numbers arrive, and the numbers are catastrophic. Depending on which tracker you trust, Set in Stone moves somewhere between 17,000 and 22,000 album equivalent units in week 1, debuting somewhere around number 39 to number 45 on the Billboard 200. For an artist who once opened at number 1 with more than 218,000 first-week units, that was not a stumble. That was a public collapse, in high definition, on the biggest scoreboard in music. And there is exactly one man on earth genetically engineered to weaponize a moment like that. 50 Cent did not wait. Within hours of the projections leaking, Curtis Jackson was on Instagram posting screenshots, laughing emojis, and captions like, 20 features under 10,000 sales. Damn boy, it's over. 50 Cent mocked the rollout. 50 Cent mocked the guest list. 50 Cent mocked the concert turnout. Vintage 50 Cent, the same surgical trolling that has made 50 Cent the undisputed heavyweight champion of hip-hop pettiness for more than 2 decades. Every script in hip-hop history says Rick Ross responds by defending the album. Rick Ross did something nobody predicted. A fan asked Rick Ross on camera about the trolling. Rick Ross paused. Rick Ross smiled that slow Miami smile. And then Rick Ross changed the subject so violently the entire conversation whiplashed. Excuse me, before you mention what 50 said, let me ask, how's it going over there in Shreveport? You borrowed all them people's money. Did you return their money back? 'Cause Shreveport ain't give you the loans you was looking for. You stole them people's money. Give them people back their money, Curtis. One breath. One breath flipped a music argument into a public corruption accusation. One breath turned a Billboard chart position into a moral trial. And Rick Ross did the whole thing using the name of a real American city, with real residents, and a real, verifiable, $124 million story attached to that name. That is the instant a petty rap feud stopped being petty. Now, precision matters here, because journalism matters more than entertainment. Rick Ross accused 50 Cent of stealing money from Shreveport. Stealing is a serious word. Stealing is not a legal finding in this story. No indictment exists. No civil filing exists. No auditor's letter exists saying Curtis Jackson criminally took money from the people of Shreveport. What exists is a messy, public, very expensive dispute over incentives, promises, timelines, and expectations. A $124 million plan on paper. Up to $50 million in reimbursable state incentives. Buildings, leases, and construction milestones running behind. A mayor saying the deal is fine. A mogul who has publicly threatened to walk. A Red River district on hold pending repairs. A G-dome that has broken ground, but has not yet risen. The accusation is powerful precisely because the accusation lives in that gray zone. Rick Ross never said 50 Cent committed a crime. Rick Ross asked a question the internet cannot unhear. If a mogul promises to transform a city and construction stalls, and the mogul publicly threatens to pull back, then what exactly has that city received in exchange for the political capital, the 99-year lease, the tax incentives, the non-profit vehicle, and the goodwill the city already spent? That question is the weapon. Whether Rick Ross meant that question as journalism or as chart deflection is a separate trial entirely. Talk to the city, and a pattern emerges. Bartenders downtown will say the studio brought weekends back, briefly. Contractors will say the bids were real, and then went quiet. Church congregations passed the donation news around like scripture. And then the councilman questioned the donation, and the mood shifted from gratitude to suspicion in a single news cycle. That shift matters, because suspicion is the soil the 6 words grew in. Rick Ross did not plant the seed. Rick Ross watered a seed that was already in the ground. And here is the irony almost nobody connected. Rick Ross has stood under that exact interrogation lamp before. In 2010, 50 Cent released Officer Ricky and dragged Rick Ross over a brief past as a corrections officer, a fact Rick Ross had denied. In 2015, Rick Ross survived bankruptcy proceedings and rebuilt into a Wingstop mogul controlling more than 25 franchise locations, plus a champagne partnership with Bel Air, plus the entire Maybach Music Group empire. When Rick Ross points at 50 Cent and says give the people back their money, Rick Ross is stepping straight into a mirror 50 Cent has held up for 15 years. That is not coincidence. That is chess. But fairness matters too, because a viral clip should never be the last word. What has Curtis Jackson actually built in Shreveport, on the ground, real and visible today? A nearly 1 million square foot studio, purchased and reopened as G-Unit Studios. More than $124 million in committed redevelopment capital, formalized in a signed state agreement. A groundbreaking ceremony for the G-Dome, with construction fencing physically standing around the Spring, Fannin, and Commerce block. $500,000 donated to 9 Shreveport area nonprofits in a single afternoon. And a public campaign to save the Louisiana film tax credit when the State House voted to eliminate the credit in late 2024, a campaign cited by Louisiana lawmakers and by Variety and The Hollywood Reporter as a key reason the credit survived at all. That episode is crucial to understanding everything that followed. Late 2024, the Louisiana House moved to kill the film tax credit entirely, and productions began packing. 50 Cent went to war for the credit, lobbying publicly, arguing that killing the credit would kill the very industry Louisiana spent decades building. Lawmakers listened. The credit survived, capped at $125 million. That fight proved 50 Cent was not a tourist in Louisiana politics. 50 Cent was a player. And players get scored on results. The empire outside Shreveport is not small either. The Power universe on Stars, Power, Power Book 2, Ghost, Power Book 3, Raising Cannon, Power Book 4, Force, has generated an estimated $130 million in streaming revenue for the network. Branson Cognac and Le Chemin du Roi champagne sit on shelves nationally, including a $30,000 505 edition decanter marketed as a collector's grail. In 2018, 50 Cent signed a multi-year, multi-series Stars deal reportedly valued at up to $150 million. Net worth estimates in 2026 hover around $100 million, with some outlets placing the number significantly higher. So the accusation is not landing on a fraud. The accusation is landing on an ambitious, expensive, unfinished project inside a shrinking city, run by a mogul with a long history of promising big and delivering eventually. That word, eventually, is where 173,000 Shreveport residents currently live. And that is exactly the pressure point Rick Ross pressed. Now zoom all the way out, because this is the part that should stay with you. 2 of the most successful black entrepreneurs in hip-hop history are arguing, in public, about the redevelopment of a mid-sized American city. 20 years ago, the argument would have been about mixtapes. 10 years ago, sneaker deals. Today, in 2026, the argument is about who does more with wealth already accumulated. And caught between the two of them is a city that never asked to be a punchline, a city that handed over a key, a lease, a nonprofit, and a downtown, and is now watching the whole arrangement get litigated on Instagram Live. Watch 4 fault lines from here. Fault line 1, the Red River District. Repairs outstanding, timelines fluid. Concrete poured means 50 Cent wins. A quiet fence site through winter means the 6 words get louder. Fault line 2, the G-Dome. Groundbreaking happened, now Shreveport needs steel, and public expectations do not forgive delay forever. Fault line 3, the film tax credit. Alive but capped at $125 million and under permanent political fire. If Baton Rouge shrinks the credit again, the entire Shreveport thesis wobbles. Fault line 4, 50 Cent's posture. 1 pullback threat already floated. A second threat plus a second mayoral contradiction turns an ambitious rebuild into a public negotiation, and public negotiations eat themselves alive on the timeline. And Rick Ross? Rick Ross already moved on. Back to promoting Set in Stone, blaming the numbers on bot-driven streaming manipulation, reminding the world about more than 25 Wingstop franchises. But Rick Ross left the sentence sitting in the timeline like a landmine. Every stall in Shreveport reshares the sentence. Every cryptic 50-cent post retrends the sentence. Rick Ross never has to say another word. 6 syllables built a self-refreshing headline. Purely as a media move, that is a masterclass. Most rap feuds die inside 72 hours. Twitter moves on. TikTok moves on. The algorithm finds a new fire. This feud is different, because this feud is anchored to a physical address. A building with a lease number. A mayor with a phone number. A non-profit vehicle with a tax ID. Every construction worker clocking in on Texas Street updates this story. Every inspection report on the Red River properties updates this story. Every legislative session that reopens the film tax credit debate updates this story. That is what separates a moment from a movement. The key to the city was not a prop. The key was a transfer of faith. Shreveport has watched factories close, watched employers shrink, watched young people leave for Dallas and Houston and Atlanta. A 99-year lease is not a business decision. A 99-year lease is a marriage. Every empty storefront on Texas Street is a promise somebody made once and never kept. The G-Dome fence went up in June, and the whole city started counting days. Louisiana did not just lose film jobs. Louisiana lost the argument that film jobs were worth keeping. Either the mayor miscommunicated or the mogul misled, and in a small city everyone eventually picks which failure feels worse. Rick Ross did not invent the whispers. Rick Ross gave the whispers a microphone with millions of followers. The corrections officer chapter taught Rick Ross a permanent lesson about who controls a narrative. Bankruptcy court in 2015 taught Rick Ross the difference between looking rich and being liquid. Wingstop franchises pay on schedule. Fame does not. The power universe prints money, while most networks bleed subscribers, and that fact buys patience. A $30,000 decanter is not a beverage. A $30,000 decanter is a message. The film credit fight proved 50 Cent could move politicians, which is exactly why the current quiet feels so loud. 1,344 promised jobs is not a statistic in Shreveport. That number is a dinner table conversation in more than 1,000 kitchens. The epic building was supposed to train the workers, who would build the future, and the workers are still waiting at the door. Nobody in Shreveport asked to become a hashtag. The hashtag arrived anyway. Rap feuds used to be fought on wax. This feud is being fought in filings, leases, and council minutes. The bathrobe did the same work as a press conference podium, only faster. Millennium Studios opened in the mid-2000s with real ambitions, hosted genuine productions, and then went dark in 2016 when Louisiana tightened the very incentives that built the facility. Walk downtown Shreveport on a weeknight, and the silence does the talking. Entire blocks glow with streetlights illuminating nothing. The key to the city ceremony in April 2024 drew smiles from every official on the stage, because hope is the one currency a shrinking city never stops printing. Mayor Tom Arsenault won office in 2022 promising a downtown revival, which means the G-Unit deal is not just a business story. The deal is a political legacy with a countdown clock. A unanimous council vote sounds like confidence, but unanimous votes also mean nobody in the room wanted to be the person caught on camera doubting the savior. The nonprofit vehicle approved to move the incentive money is the kind of structure that looks boring on paper and becomes very interesting the moment a project stalls. The epic building was designed to train local workers for production jobs, which makes the building the most human piece of the whole arrangement. Paychecks, not press releases. The Red River District is downtown's nightlife heart, the strip where Shreveport goes to feel alive on a Saturday, which is exactly why threatening to pull back there landed like a threat against the city's dignity. Louisiana's 32.2% film job decline is not an abstraction. That number is gaffers, carpenters, drivers, and caterers packing trucks for Georgia. Georgia built an empire on film tax credits, while Louisiana debated cutting Georgia's playbook, and every producer in America watched the debate in real time. Tyler Perry proved in Atlanta that a black-owned studio can resurrect dead land and mint a new industry. Shreveport is the test of whether the Atlanta miracle was a formula or a fluke. 50 Cent has played the long game before. The 2004 vitamin water equity deal paid out somewhere between $60 and $100 million when Coca-Cola bought the brand, a masterclass in patience over quick cash. The Stars deal structure rewards ownership, not appearances, and ownership is the one language 50 Cent speaks more fluently than almost anyone in entertainment. Rick Ross built a parallel empire the old-fashioned way, franchise by franchise, with Wingstop fryers generating cash flow that does not care about chart positions. The Promised Land estate in Georgia, the car shows, the buffalo on the lawn. Rick Ross turned visibility itself into a revenue stream, which makes the current visibility war almost poetic. The feud between these two men is old enough to vote. The feud started before some of the people arguing about the feud online were born. Officer Ricky worked in 2010 because the attack hit identity. The Shreveport line works in 2026 because the attack hits legacy, and legacy is the only thing either man has left to protect. A diss track expires with a playlist cycle. An accusation attached to a construction site renews itself with every permit filing. The streaming manipulation defense Rick Ross floated for the album numbers may even contain truth, but truth is irrelevant when the timeline has already chosen a headline. Hip-hop blogs used to need a verse to build a story. Now a caption does the same work in a quarter of the time with twice the reach. Instagram Live has become the most powerful press conference room in America, with no podium, no moderator, and no fact-checker between a mogul and millions of people. A $500,000 donation should have been the easiest headline of the year, and the donation still turned into a controversy, which says everything about the fragility of the trust underneath the deal. Netflix cameras changed the physics of charity. The moment a gift might also be content, every recipient and every councilman starts doing different math. Groundbreaking ceremonies exist to convert doubt into memory. Once the shovel hits dirt on camera, the public stops asking whether and starts asking when. The G-Don't name alone tells you the ambition level. Not a renovation, not a retrofit. A branded arena planted in the middle of a downtown that has not seen a crane in years. So remember where this started. A bathrobe. A phone camera. A slow Miami smile. 6 words that cost nothing to say and everything to answer. Give them people back their money, Curtis. The whole world heard a diss. Shreveport heard a question about Shreveport's own future. And for the next 12 months, every crane that rises or fails to rise over downtown is going to answer that question, one way or another. If this breakdown gave you a new way of seeing the story, do 3 things before you leave. Like this video, so the algorithm learns you want long-form journalism instead of 30-second reaction clips. Subscribe, because the Shreveport story is nowhere near over, and every groundbreaking, every stall, every Instagram statement, and every council vote is getting covered right here. And drop 1 word in the comments, either Ross or 50, not to pick a side in a rap beef, but to say which version of events sounds closer to the truth of what is happening in Louisiana right now. Because in 2026, the biggest hip-hop story of the year is not a diss track. The biggest hip-hop story of the year is a construction site. And 173,000 people are living inside the punchline, waiting to find out whether the punchline turns into a skyline.